Hey friends, today I want to talk about this crinkly black paper called graphite. Now, out of the many supplies I use at the craft shop each week, this stuff is probably one of my favorites, and it's also one of the more useful items that we use here. It works just like carbon paper, so you've got this loose graphite on the back side of the paper that is rubbed off when you use pressure on the other side of it. And we use it to make copies, usually to do a pattern transfer onto a surface. Most of the time that surface is a canvas, but it could be used to transfer onto a wall or a piece of wood or even another piece of paper. Now there's two sides to it. And the way you can tell what's the front side or the back side is the front side is a little shimmery, kind of glossy like a magazine page, and the back side is more dull and it's also darker. So that's how you can tell what side has the graphite that's actually going to rub off on the surface. I like to describe it as a piece of paper, kind of like tissue paper, that has some loose pencil lead on the back, and when you use something like a pencil to trace over it, you're rubbing that loose pencil lead off onto whatever surface is behind it. So you can use a pencil, but you don't even have to use a working pen or pencil. You could use the back of a pencil, you could use the back of a paintbrush, or really anything to show how that image is going to show up on the paper. So as you can see, there's nothing on the paper underneath, and I just used my fingernail to trace a heart, and of course that graphite just rubbed off, and there's the heart underneath. Now this stuff can be used over and over and over again, and as you can tell, this one has been used many times. You can tell by all of the little scratch marks on the back, and as long as you take really good care of it and don't rip the edges when you're trying to peel off the tape, this stuff can last for a really long time. Now I want to share with you something that I discovered last summer, because graphite is great when you're transferring onto a light color background, but what if you're transferring onto a darker canvas like the one that I've done here? So I have a lot of dark blue and dark purple, but I know if I transfer an image with this black graphite onto that background, it's going to be really hard to see, and my lines are sort of going to get lost in the dark background. Well, much to my surprise, they actually make white graphite, and it works the same way, if not better, than the black graphite paper that I'm used to using. So, white graphite is a little different because in this case, the front side is going to be the papery side that's not shiny, and the back side where the actual graphite is going to rub off from is the more waxy, shiny side. So that's how you're going to tell. It's just opposite of what we were talking about with the black graphite. And again, this one can be used over and over and over, and you can do many designs with it. That's why I like it so much, because it has so much value. One sheet can last you forever if you take really good care of it. So let's get ready to do our transfer. The last time I did some jellyfish on a nice dark background, and this time I have a sketch of an axolotl, and I'm just going to get this taped onto the canvas with the graphite, and then we'll be able to trace it. After you carefully center your image on the canvas, you're just going to take a couple pieces of painter's tape, and we will carefully put that tape in such a way where it's going to touch the paper and the graphite and also wrap around the canvas so that it doesn't move around. We want to make sure it's secure, and we also want to make sure that we're taping on opposite ends, so either side to side or up and down, but we want to make sure that our paper isn't going to be sliding around. And one of the reasons why I like to tape them on opposite ends is because it allows us to be able to flip up the paper and check our design before we peel the tape off. Because if you peel off the paper and then realize later you forgot an eye or an arm or something didn't get traced, it would be really hard to place the paper and the graphite back in the exact same position as before to be able to trace those things on there. So I'm using the back of a paintbrush. I press pretty hard when I'm tracing onto the graphite because I want to make sure that my image will show up and you can see everything easily. I usually tell my students they want to press hard like they're coloring with a crayon, and that gives them a good idea of the amount of pressure they want to use. If you're using a stretched canvas, you definitely don't want to press as hard because you can actually poke right through the canvas if you're using a sharp enough pencil. But this one's just a canvas board, so we can press as hard as we like and we're not going to hurt it. Now everything is traced, and we're going to carefully peel the tape off the canvas. I always do this from the back because if you do it from the front, as you're trying to peel up that tape, sometimes your fingernail will actually be rubbing on the graphite, and pieces of graphite will come off onto the canvas in places where you don't want it to be. He looks really awesome. You can see him well. It almost looks like we used a piece of chalk to draw him on there, but this graphite's not going to rub off the way chalk would. And now he's ready to be painted over with any colors you're going to use on there. I'm also going to show you how you can save your graphite piece by just very carefully grabbing the graphite and inching it off of the tape so that it doesn't rip those edges, because they're very delicate. As I said earlier, it's thin like a piece of tissue paper, so you really want to make sure you're careful about peeling off that tape so you can save this piece and use it over and over.